mater, dear old Slater hat. Alma mater, see our banners fly. Though we may stray, strength and hope always. In our heart we sing of our school. Hail to the orange, hail to the black. Hail alma mater, ever to be. Hail alma mater, ever to be. Victory, dear Slater, we love thee.
The paint was barely dry within the brick building that now stands at 325 McDowell Street when 6-year-old Thomas McDaniel walked through the front doors for the first time and turned right into his first grade classroom. There, Miss Lolita Meade spent the remainder of the year teaching him and a handful of classmates how to read, how to write, and how to sing the alma mater that today, more than 6 decades later, is still a proud reminder of his days at Bristol, Tennessee's Slater School.
We sung that song after sporting events. Early in the morning, every day at school, we'd sing that song to start off the day. Or if we had a pep rally or something, we sang that song afterwards. I remember that song. Anything we would do, event or anything, we'd always sing that song. And that song meant that we may not always win. You may not always do great on the test, but there's always a tomorrow. That song taught us respect. It taught us respect for our teachers. It's taught us how to take care of one another. And that's what it says, we love thee. That was because of our teachers, because of our parents, the sacrifices, the community of Bristol went through so that we could go to school here at Slater. And Slater had so much to do in all of our lives.
In the early 1900s, long before the Civil Rights Movement and the integration of schools, there were 3 schools dedicated to the education of Bristol, Tennessee's black population. Woodlawn Avenue School, located at the present-day Hacklerwood American Legion Post, a parochial school within the 9th Street Presbyterian Church, and the Bristol Normal Institute located at 321 McDowell Street. A $1,000 donation from John F. Slater, a wealthy philanthropist committed to the education of freed blacks throughout the South, made it possible in 1915 for the Bristol, Tennessee Board of Education to purchase the Bristol Normal Institute. Although the name was originally changed to McDowell High School, the class of 1919 voted to rename the school John F. Slater School in honor of their generous benefactor. Then, in 1927, a 4-room elementary school was built at the corner of College Avenue and Alabama Street on a site where the Bristol, Tennessee City Schools Maintenance Facility now stands. Black students outside the city limits attended 1st through 4th grades at the new Lincoln Elementary School, while those in town went to Slater. When they reached 5th grade, Lincoln students transferred to Slater School. Harris Howard grew up on Blackley Road in an area often called Pig City because of the vast number of farms that existed there. He attended Lincoln Elementary until 4th grade, then made the walk each day to Slater School to begin his 5th grade year.
So when I started, there wasn't no such thing as a bus. And my parents didn't drive, so whenever you did get a ride, you just had to hitch a ride with somebody that was going to work. But we were expected to walk. We weren't permitted to miss school. It was, in my family, my brothers and sisters, there was 10 of us that went to Slater. And one of the things that we were proud of was that we didn't miss school. There wasn't no such thing as like the snow days and stuff that kids get now. That didn't exist. We went to school every day, and we walked. I would walk up 5th Street, then walk up and go up Pennsylvania, from Pennsylvania to McDowell Street and up McDowell Street to the school. And you was kind of expected to stay on that route, which being boys, you would often go on the routes that your parents told you you had no business going to, because back during those days, you know, everything was segregated. You know, there was no such thing as integration at that time, so you were supposed to stay out of certain areas.
When young Harris arrived at Slater School as a student for the first time, the original wooden structure was still in use. He and his classmates watched while the new John F. Slater School, a building that was then called one of the most modern buildings of its kind by the Bristol Herald-Courier, was built on the adjacent lot at a cost of $322,000. Walt Morton remembers the construction project.
I remember when they were building the school, I used to play in the foundation as they was building it. Used to run around down there and play. Well, it was mounds of dirt in the center of the columns of the foundation. And like I say, I was about 6 or 7, I guess, when they started building the school.
I can vaguely remember about the transfer from the old school to the new school, and carrying my desk, which was a test for me because I was a little fella anyway.
The new school was dedicated on May 5th, 1955, during a community ceremony that included presentations by then Bristol, Tennessee Mayor Thomas Curtin and Slater Principal S.G. Green. Students now had the benefit of a contemporary building complete with 10 classrooms, a library, cafeteria, home economics department, and an auditorium for school assemblies and performances. The new school held fast to the high standards and proud traditions that had long been a part of Slater School. Alumni like Thomas McDaniel, Harris Howard, brothers Walt and Mike Morton, Lawrence Bell Jr., and Drusilla and John Hogans III remember it as a welcoming place where students, teachers, parents, and neighbors came together to provide for the education and spiritual growth of every child.
We started out with devotion every morning. They started out from the 12th grade down, I think they started. And they picked certain students out of there to lead devotion all the way down to the first grade. And you could find out the top students they would send to do the devotion in the morning. And you had prayer, scripture, and we sung Star Spangled Banner of America. We did every morning. Someone led prayer, yeah, and devotion, and that was what we had every day over the loudspeaker. You learn how to speak over the loudspeaker. We spoke to the whole school.
My parents always taught my siblings and I that you're no more than anyone else, you're no less than anyone else. This same thing applied here at Slater with the teachers. They wanted the best for us. They gave us the best, wanted us to be the best. I think they all attended church. They certainly, it's like a religious environment here. And the good thing is, I think I got a B one time from Mr. Williams because I was studying after church at Lee Street. I was in the parking lot and was having a test, English test on Monday, and I had my book with me studying. And someone told him about it, and I think I got maybe a B because he found out that I was studying at church or in the parking lot.
The biggest thing that I remember about Slater is that the teachers always tried to prepare you for the situation that you would be confronted with. They sat down with you and talked about being prepared for everything. They tried to get the students at Slater to, even though we didn't have some of the other things that some of the other schools would have, but there was something about the teachers that would prepare you for different situations and whatever you wanted to do, and what they always encouraged you to as far as education-wise, to go further than where you, and they expected you, if you was at a certain level, somebody was always pushing you to be just a little bit better than what you thought you could be.
Well, one thing is the teachers always made you feel like that you were important. That's one of the things. I never felt like I was out of place or wasn't cared about. And I think that helped me. And they saw something in me that they thought I could succeed. And like I said, they just influenced me and made me want to be a teacher and do something with my life. And I credit them with that, because they really made me feel like I belonged, and they just thought I was important. I just felt like, you know, that I was really cared about.
Well, like I say, it was like a family. Another thing is, most of the people on the Tennessee side lived in homes. On the Virginia side, they had apartments, and we didn't have any apartments on the Tennessee side back during that time. So everybody was more related, you know. It's like I said, everything was like a family, and you just grew up together. And
because every neighborhood had a gathering spot,
you know,
where you played the games and stuff, or got together. You know, if you went there, somebody's gonna be there. You know, so it wasn't anything like getting lonely. You know, it wasn't nothing like lonely, because you always have somewhere to go, somebody's house to go to, you know, and felt you was welcome. You didn't even ask. You know,
teachers like Marie Higgins, Izetta Brown, Peggy Pender, and Pauline Robinson, known throughout the community for her sweet potato pies, provided quality instruction preparing their students for college and life after Slater. When S.G. Green passed away while serving as Slater's principal, the school's leadership position was filled by Lorenzo Wyatt, a spiritual man still remembered for his stern lectures and caring nature. Helen Dagg served as school secretary and made sure students minded their manners. Fitzhugh Houston was hired to teach math and science, but also coached both basketball and football for a number of years. While legendary coach Dorsey Sims, now in the TSSAA Hall of Fame, coached boys basketball, working hard to recruit enough students to form a team. Whether in the classroom, on the playing field, or in the community, they became the driving force that allowed Slater students to excel.
I gained confidence, I gained knowledge in being class president, in being captain of the football team. I was especially proud of being captain of football and basketball teams, because it wasn't a class thing. In other words, players didn't choose me, the coach chose me. And so that meant a lot to me, that he had that much faith in me. There seemed to be no disagreements about it at the time from other players, whatever. Like I said, we got along well.
The teachers were such that they would make sure that certain things was taken care of that normally would be taken care of at your house. When you come from a large family, a lot of times you didn't get everything that you need, because it was passed down. And hopefully the brother and it was girls ahead of me, so it was hand-me-downs from other houses that, and if the shoes didn't fit, then they would put newspaper in the bottom and to make them so you could work, but the thing about it, when you think about it now, it was that thought that everybody was trying to look out for somebody else. And it was the same thing with the school. If something that you was liking when you got to school, you didn't maybe had the finances or whatever. If a teacher had it, that they took care of the situation. It wasn't that they was loaning your parents. They took care of the situation completely. That was the togetherness that you had from the school. Back during that time, it was kind of like the college coaches that recruit, because they would come to your house in the summer and they would speak to your parents and say, well, you know, I want your son to come out for football. And that was, I can remember when Mr. Houston came out into our community, and you knew he was seeing how many boys were going to be there to play on my football team. And he would come and knock on your door and talk to your parents and say, you know, I would like for him to play football. And he was kind of expected to, because you didn't have a whole lot of students. Because in my class, when I graduated, it was just 7 of us.
And it wasn't a thing about competition. You know, you just told him that I'd like to come out in basketball, and he said, meet me so-and-so, and I'll give you a uniform. Now, you know, and that's about as far as it went. And then he'd tell you when to go to practice and put me where he thought I belonged as far as positioning was concerned. And I was kind of probably a late bloomer, because I didn't go into sports until, 10th, 11th grade. And but it was fun, and I think it helped build my character a lot more. I really do.
Slater was a place for serious learning and growth, but even the best students still found time to just be kids.
One of the things that they told us when we got to our classes and stuff was that we had no business being on the 2nd floor in Slater if you was in elementary school. You had no business, but we would make it our business to somehow slip up here and just take a peek at how it was with the big kids and the older kids. And you know, you always have crushes on older girls. And I always had a crush on Drusilla. And Mrs. Higgins' classroom is, if you go at this door and make a left and go all the way to the end, Mrs. Higgins' classroom was right there. And it seemed like, I think that was John and Drusilla's. You know how kids would meet to talk to one another. I think that was their window there. And I used to come to the top of the steps. And the reason why I knew Drusilla is because she went to the same church that I grew up in.
I'll tell you this one.
Okay.
We was in one of our classes, I won't call them names, but we had a teacher that one of the guys was determined he was going to get her, and I'll never forget, he put tacks in her seat. And she sat down that morning on it, and she didn't move, didn't say a word, didn't do anything. And about 20, 30 minutes, she got up and she's still teaching class. And as he said, man, I wonder what she's got under her dress. Ain't no way she can sit down there and not holler. But that's what I'll never forget, putting the tacks in her seat.
Despite the treasured memories that remain and the lasting friendships formed, those who attended Slater were keenly aware, then and now, that they didn't have access to the same resources as those who attended the city's all-white schools. Textbooks were often worn and outdated, hand-me-downs from elsewhere in the city, and the same was true of the limited sports equipment available to them.
Take what little we had. We didn't have much, and you took and made something out of it. We had hand-me-down clothes, but we would sew on them. The shoes were hand-me-downs from other schools, most of the white schools or colleges. Back then, that's what they had. We had the whites and the blacks. And we'd take their old equipment and make it like new equipment by polishing it, putting maybe a spike on it, and that's how we made it. We just took what someone else didn't want and turned it into our treasure. We learned that here at Slater. Just take what they give you and make the best out of it.
I was a few years behind my brother, but I remember practicing football out on the football field and getting late in the evenings, and they'd have people bring the cars in and turn the headlights on because we didn't have any lights. Coach Sims wasn't ready to stop practice, and we'd have families come out and mamas, dads turn car lights on to finish practice.
When the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was adopted, discrimination in programs and activities that received federal financial assistance, including the nation's schools, was declared illegal. Slater then became an elementary school, and Mary Collins, who had served for many years as principal of Lincoln Elementary, was named its new principal. Lawrence Bell Jr. was in the final graduating class at Slater, receiving his diploma on June 3, 1965. John and Drusilla Hogans, Walt Morton, and Harris Howard had graduated years earlier and had moved on to the next phase of life. Thomas McDaniels and Mike Morton were still high school students when Slater closed. They transferred to Tennessee High School in the fall of 1965. They experienced the changes firsthand, but the entire community was watching.
At the time, wasn't nobody really excited about going. I mean, want to go, because except my mama, because she wanted. She's one. Had a positive note on everything. So, again, it wasn't that big a deal. Overall, it was, but to us, it wasn't. And now, the one thing I will say, I know a lot of, especially guys that play sports over here and stuff, kind of got left out when we went to Tennessee High, because they didn't even try out for the teams. And so, where we'd have had probably 30, 40 guys on a team, over there we only had like 3 or 4 play, period, because everybody just didn't even try. So that's the only biggest, that was the biggest difference, I think.
It was a sad time. It was new. This was all we knew. This was our home. This was our teachers. At the time, it was it wasn't pleasant in Bristol. We were divided, and I think you know what I'm talking about. We couldn't go in certain neighborhoods. They couldn't come in our neighborhoods. We wasn't allowed in stores, or it was just a tension. Nobody knew how to accept it. We didn't want to go. They didn't want us. That was the mindset. We knew that when we got over there. I remember the first day I went to Tennessee High. It was probably about 35 of us from Slater went over there, and we sat in the front. It's a front yard. We just gathered right there in the front yard, and all the Tennessee High students was around us. And, it was just like a spectacle, but we managed. Especially I'd already played ball with them. I was on the football team at the time, and sports has a big influence over people. You get that bondage, and they already knew me and a few other guys, but majority of us that come from Slater, they go over there, they quit. They quit school, they dropped out. They couldn't take it. They just dropped out. They didn't fit at all.
It's kind of like a double-edged sword. It's good and bad, and I look at it the same way. Like I said, there were never that many black people here on the Tennessee side in the first place. Once integration came about, it was good in that we're consolidating. However, a lot of blacks left Bristol. Teachers left. A lot of them couldn't get jobs. For example, my coach, Dorsey Sims, who's an excellent coach, by the way. It was a sad time and a happy time in other ways. It's hard to kind of put your hand on it. It was sad and it was good at the same time.
It was kind of sad.
Yeah.
It was kind of sad because we saw our teachers, some of them were not hired and put into Tennessee High or junior high. Some of them had to leave town to find jobs. So that was sad. That was sad. But then it was a good thing because we felt like things would be more equal for our kids, you know, than what we had when we came along. We felt like it would be different, and because we rarely had new textbooks. Our textbooks and our football uniforms and things like that always came from Tennessee High.
Yeah.
Or Advanced Junior High.
The
So,
equipment that I used in football came from Tennessee High.
So those are the kinds of things that we knew kids that came after us would have the same textbooks and materials and things that they needed, you know. But it was sad because we just had a family connection here, you know.
That family connection continues today. Class reunions have become less frequent in recent years because of the health concerns, but the close bond between those who attended Slater School, friends, classmates, and neighbors, still continues. The building itself was used as a technical school for many years, but now serves as Slater Community Center, a facility operated by the Bristol, Tennessee Department of Parks and Recreation. Former students say they are glad to see the building, their alma mater, Dear Slater, still in use.
I am thrilled, to be honest with you, because so many of the black high schools that I went to, whether it's a musical competition, basketball, football, middle schools have been torn down or just deteriorating, sitting around of no use. And a lot of people don't know anything about the fact, as we were saying before, that there were black schools before, that there hasn't always been integration. Many years of segregation, especially here in the South. So I'm thrilled that the school has been kept up and refined. I look around at all the improvements. It's a good thing. Not a bad thing, it's a good thing.
I live right across the street, and I watch the folks come in at night and day. They're just having a great time. And it brings back memories when we used to come in here. We had great times in this building. They still making noise in this building, which I like. Noise is going on. That means this building's living. Slater's alive. And as long as they're using this building, Slater will go on.